There are moments in royal life when the biggest story isn't an official announcement, a state banquet, or even a palace photograph. Sometimes it's something much quieter, a subtle change in body language, a passing comment from someone close to the situation, a report that raises an uncomfortable question rather than answering it. And that's exactly where this story begins. Because according to recent tabloid reporting, the Princess of Wales is becoming increasingly concerned, not simply about the ongoing rift between Prince William and Prince Harry, but about what that conflict may be doing to William himself. If those reports contain even a measure of truth, then this isn't merely another chapter in a family disagreement. It becomes a story about responsibility, grief, pressure, and the emotional cost of carrying the future of the monarchy while still living with wounds from the past. Before we go any further, if you enjoy thoughtful royal family analysis and haven't subscribed yet, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you joined us. It only takes a second, and it really helps the channel continue producing balanced discussions like this one. One reason this latest report has attracted attention is because it doesn't focus on Harry's actions or Meghan's decisions. Instead, it shifts the spotlight onto William's state of mind. According to Heat magazine, citing an unnamed source, Catherine apparently has reached a point where gentle encouragement may no longer be enough. The publication claims she has urged William to stop allowing the ongoing family feud to dominate his mood and affect those around him. Now, it's important to pause here. These comments come from an unnamed source speaking to a magazine, and neither Kensington Palace nor the Prince and Princess of Wales has commented publicly on them. As always with this type of reporting, they should be viewed as claims rather than established fact. Even so, they raise an interesting question. Why do stories like this resonate so strongly? Perhaps because many families recognize the situation, not necessarily the castles, the crowns, or the state constitutional duties, but the pain of siblings who stop speaking, parents caught in the middle, partners trying to support someone they love while quietly wondering whether anything they say will actually make a difference. Strip away the royal titles for a moment, and it's an experience that feels surprisingly familiar. But here's where things become more complicated. William's circumstances are anything but ordinary. Over the last few years alone, his life has changed beyond recognition. His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, died after 70 years on the throne. His father became king. His own position shifted dramatically from second in line to immediate heir. At almost exactly the same time, the relationship with his younger brother appeared to deteriorate publicly through interviews, documentaries, memoirs, and continuing media coverage. Whatever anyone thinks about either side of that dispute, few would argue it has been easy. And then came another extraordinary challenge. Last year, both King Charles and Catherine announced cancer diagnoses within weeks of one another. Those announcements transformed the public conversation almost overnight. Suddenly, William wasn't only supporting the future queen, he was also supporting a king undergoing treatment while continuing with public duties himself. That is a remarkable amount of pressure for anyone. Which brings us back to Catherine. One detail in the reporting stands out above everything else. Not that she's supposedly encouraging William to move on, but how? The reports suggest she has been encouraging exercise, fresh air, spending more time outdoors, even suggesting yoga as a way of managing stress. Now, whether those specific conversations happened exactly as described, none of us can know, but they fit remarkably well with something Catherine has consistently spoken about in public. For years, she has championed nature, early childhood development, and mental well-being. Long before her own illness became public, she was talking about the importance of spending time outdoors for emotional health. Think back to her Back to Nature garden at the Chelsea Flower Show. Think about the woodland walks frequently shown during family photographs. Think about the way the Wales family often appears happiest away from grand palaces and formal ceremonies. Nature isn't simply a backdrop for Catherine, it's become part of her public philosophy, so if she were encouraging William to spend more time outside, it wouldn't feel out of character at all.
And perhaps that's one reason this story has attracted attention, because it sounds plausible, not necessarily because it has been confirmed, but because it aligns with what people already know about her. Yet another fascinating aspect often gets overlooked. This isn't only about Harry, it's about identity. William has spent his entire life preparing for a role unlike any other. Imagine growing up knowing almost every major decision in your life would eventually be examined through the lens of monarchy. Every friendship, every holiday, every disagreement, every mistake, and eventually every family conflict. That's an extraordinary burden. Public discussions sometimes describe William as serious, reserved, or occasionally impatient. Others see someone deeply committed to duty. Those aren't necessarily contradictory observations. History shows that heirs to the throne often carry enormous internal pressure. King George VI famously struggled with self-confidence. King Charles spent decades waiting for responsibilities he could never fully embrace until later in life. Even Queen Elizabeth II spoke repeatedly about duty outweighing personal preference. Perhaps that's one of the monarchy's oldest traditions, not ceremony, responsibility. And responsibility often comes at a personal cost. But here's the detail almost everyone overlooks. For William and Harry, the public doesn't simply observe the disagreement. The public remembers a different story. Two boys walking behind their mother's coffin, two young men laughing together during military engagements, two brothers teasing one another during interviews. Those images became embedded in public memory, which is why every fresh report about continued distance carries emotional weight. People aren't simply reacting to today's headlines, they're comparing them with memories stretching back nearly 3 decades. That's incredibly powerful. It's also why reconciliation remains such a compelling subject, not because anyone outside the family knows what should happen, but because so many people remember what once appeared to exist. Of course, relationships are rarely as simple as public memory suggests. Families evolve, circumstances change, trust can be damaged, sometimes permanently. We simply don't know everything that has happened behind closed doors, and perhaps we never will. Nor should we expect to. The royal family lives unusually public lives, but they are still entitled to private relationships. That's an important distinction, often forgotten during media debates. Now consider another part of the recent reporting. According to the unnamed source, Catherine is encouraging William to focus on everything going well in his life, rather than dwelling on circumstances beyond his control. Again, we cannot verify those conversations, but there is an interesting point beneath the claim. Objectively speaking, William has experienced significant professional success recently.
The Earthshot Prize continues attracting international attention. Environmental organizations, businesses, and innovators increasingly view it as a serious global platform rather than simply another royal initiative. His work around homelessness has also gained considerable attention across Britain. Rather than limiting involvement to charitable visits, he has increasingly spoken about practical long-term solutions. That approach reflects a broader evolution in modern royal work. Less ribbon-cutting, more measurable impact. Whether everyone agrees with every initiative is another matter entirely, but it demonstrates forward momentum. So if Catherine really is encouraging him to look ahead rather than behind, she would certainly have plenty to point toward. And then there's family life. One of the quieter themes emerging recently is the speed with which their children are growing up. George approaching secondary school, Charlotte becoming increasingly confident during public appearances, Louis continuing to delight photographers with expressions that seem impossible to predict. Parents everywhere understand that strange feeling. One day they're holding your hand, the next they're almost as tall as you. Time moves rather unfairly when children are involved. Reports suggest George may soon begin attending Eton College, following family tradition if those plans proceed. That would mark another milestone, another reminder that childhood doesn't last forever.
If the reported conversations are accurate, it's understandable why Catherine might want William to savor these years, rather than remain emotionally tied to unresolved disputes. Because childhood doesn't wait for reconciliation. School terms arrive, birthdays pass, families grow older, life keeps moving. And perhaps that's one of the saddest realities surrounding long-running family disagreements. Time continues whether people are ready or not. History offers several interesting parallels. Royal families have rarely been free from sibling tensions. King Edward VIII's abdication permanently reshaped the life of his brother, who unexpectedly became George VI. Princess Margaret and Queen Elizabeth experienced periods of disagreement despite obvious affection. Even Queen Victoria's children frequently quarreled, despite living within one of history's most famous royal households. Royal history, in truth, is filled with complicated families, perhaps because royal families are still families, only watched by millions. But there's another institutional dimension. The monarchy depends heavily on continuity, stability, predictability, public confidence. Internal family disputes inevitably attract attention because they risk distracting from constitutional roles. That's one reason palace officials traditionally avoid responding directly to personal allegations. Silence in royal communications often reflects institutional strategy rather than personal agreement or disagreement. That silence, however, creates space, and where information is limited, speculation often expands, which explains why unnamed source stories generate so much discussion. They fill a vacuum, sometimes accurately, sometimes not. The challenge for viewers and journalists is separating confirmed information from informed speculation. That's becoming increasingly difficult in today's media landscape, especially when royal coverage spreads globally within minutes. Something else deserves consideration. The reports describe William as appearing angry, yet they also suggest that beneath that anger lies sadness. Psychologists have long discussed how grief and disappointment sometimes present themselves through frustration rather than tears. Again, nobody outside William's immediate circle can diagnose his emotions, nor should they. But the broader observation that people often mistake sadness for anger is certainly recognized well beyond royal circles. If someone carries disappointment for years, it may eventually become difficult to distinguish between frustration, grief, and exhaustion.
That's true whether someone lives in Kensington Palace or an ordinary semi-detached house in Manchester. Human emotions don't recognize titles. Perhaps Catherine understands that better than anyone. Publicly, she has consistently appeared calm under extraordinary circumstances. Her own recovery has inspired many people navigating serious illness. Recent public appearances have projected optimism without pretending the previous year never happened. It's been a careful balance, hope without denial, strength without perfection. That may explain why reports portraying her as encouraging perspective resonate with readers. Whether every quoted sentence is genuine isn't really the central point. The broader image aligns with the public figure people believe they know. Someone patient, someone practical, someone quietly resilient. But perhaps the biggest unanswered question remains this: can time alone heal a family rift? History gives mixed answers. Some relationships recover unexpectedly, others never fully do. Forgiveness, where it happens, rarely follows a timetable, nor can outsiders force it. Ultimately, reconciliation requires willingness from everyone involved. No amount of public commentary can substitute for private conversations. If those conversations ever happen, they'll almost certainly happen away from cameras, as they should. For now, all anyone can honestly say is this: the relationship between William and Harry appears, based on publicly available information, to remain distant. Both continue pursuing very different lives. Both continue carrying significant responsibilities, and both continue attracting extraordinary public interest.
Everything beyond that becomes far more uncertain. Perhaps that's why stories like this continue appearing, because uncertainty invites questions, questions invite headlines, and headlines invite discussion. Whether those discussions ultimately help the family involved is another matter entirely. In many ways, this story isn't really about whether Catherine told William to snap out of it. That specific phrase may or may not accurately reflect a private conversation. The deeper issue is much more universal. How do you help someone carrying emotional burdens they cannot easily put down? Do you listen, encourage, challenge, wait patiently, offer perspective? Perhaps the answer changes depending on the day. Relationships often require all of those things, especially marriages lasting many years. William and Catherine recently marked 15 years together. Through military service, parenthood, constitutional change, public scrutiny, bereavement, illness, and enormous responsibility, they've remained a partnership in the public eye. That doesn't mean life has been easy. It almost certainly hasn't. But it does suggest they have repeatedly found ways to navigate extraordinary circumstances together. Whether this latest report accurately captures private conversations, only they truly know. What seems beyond dispute, however, is that the coming years will place even greater expectations on both of them. One day, William will become king, Catherine will become queen. The demands of those roles won't lessen. If anything, they'll grow, which makes emotional resilience not merely a personal quality, but an institutional necessity. And perhaps that's the real story hiding beneath today's headlines. Not anger, not blame, not palace gossip, but the quiet human challenge of balancing duty with family, public expectation with private emotion, and hope with unresolved pain. I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Do you think reports like this offer meaningful insight into the realities of royal life, or do you believe too much is being inferred from anonymous sources? And do you think time still has the power to heal this well-publicized family divide, or has too much happened for that now? Share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for being part of these conversations, and if you enjoy thoughtful, balanced royal family analysis, don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more to discuss, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.